We just got confirmation of SoFi short sellers covering en masse. They're underwater on their positions. They're losing millions of dollars and they're rushing to the exits to close their positions, which is contributing to this higher stock price that we're seeing consistently every single day that we look at the stock. SoFi stock is up 8% over the past 5 days alone and 50% over the past month alone. It's a parabolic move upwards, and all of it comes at a crucial time just because we've broken through some significant price targets and we're eyeing now S&P 500 inclusion. And I'm going to talk about all of that in this video. So let's jump right in. As I mentioned, SoFi has had an amazing performance, completely breaking out, closing off on Friday at $16.41, up 8% over the past five trading days. And when I say we're having a breakout, I mean, if we look at just the stock price on a daily basis, you're going to see almost exclusively green candles. And we've been predominantly upwards, right? 50% in a month is not something easy. It's not a common occurrence. It's the result of a parabolic move upwards. And I've mentioned this in previous videos analyzing SoFi by saying that this company has been detached from the fundamentals for so long that this was an inevitability and that sooner or later this would come to parity and this gap would close. Because if you have the underlying fundamentals of a business consistently improving and then you have the stock price remaining absolutely flat, then the delta between those two values is the deal that investors are getting. And as the valuation becomes better and better, the gap is going to start to close because people are going to be waking up and buying that stock. And that's exactly what we've been seeing over the last month. And that's contributed to a number of changes, including the market perception around SoFi. Because as the stock price has gone up, we know that sentiment follows price. And as a result, sentiment has also gone up. Many retail investors are just flat out euphoric about the stock. Many are now posting online through articles or through X around whether the stock is overvalued or whether they've missed the boat and they should be buying right now. And many that I'm seeing are just discovering the stock for the first time, saying, oh, this is a new company that I'm investing in. It's called SoFi. What do you guys know about it? Meanwhile, the rest of us have been in this company from $6, $7, $8 for years now, right? It's a complete turnaround from the sentiment that we had just 6 months ago. And that's a testament to how quickly these things can change. And the main reason why this is significant is because we're now approaching levels that stir up conversation around S&P 500 inclusion eligibility criteria, particularly the market cap requirement, which SoFi has always been too small to meet. Because a lot of you watching may know that a company needs to have 4 quarters of GAAP profitability to be eligible, but many of you may not know that there's also a market cap requirement, that the company, in order to join the index, needs to be $18 billion in market cap. In addition to a couple of other factors, the selection criteria does include a monthly trading volume. They include the float or the market liquidity. They include the profitability. They include the market cap. There's a whole list. I'm actually going to attach it in the description, the full document around this criteria, but we're going to look at it together in this video. This threshold around market cap specifically is periodically adjusted to reflect changes in the market and index composition. And if we visit the S&P Global documents and the index methodology, it's going to show that 18 billion is the threshold for S&P 500 inclusion. At the beginning of this year, in January 2024, that number was 15.8 billion, but in April, that number was increased to 18 billion. Now, I made a quick post on X earlier tonight saying that the earliest that SoFi could enter the index is March of 2025. And the reason is because we closed off at a $16.8 billion market cap on Friday. And in order for SoFi to have an $18 billion market cap with over 1.07 billion shares outstanding, it would equate to a stock price around $16.80, which is not far off of where we are right now. I mean, it's like 40 cents difference of where we're trading right now. So the problem is not for us to hit $16.80. It's actually to maintain that price because the market cap requirement is calculated based on 3-month average cumulative total company level market capitalization. This smooths out short-term fluctuations and ensures the company consistently meets the threshold. So said in plain English, what this means is that SoFi's 3-month average needs to be above $18 billion in market cap. Like we can't have a stock just go parabolic, hold $18 billion for 1 month or 1 week and then fall right back down, the index would fluctuate wildly, right? So it needs to have some type of stability to maintain that market cap for 3 months. Now, as I read further into this, I was curious to find when the rebalancing of the index is. And what I read is that it happens after the close of trading on the third Friday of March, June, September, and December, because it's a quarterly rebalance of the index. So changes to the index or new additions to the index are typically announced 1 week in advance of rebalancing. So if we just follow that logic, we can feasibly assume that the index will rebalance on 21st of March 2025, because that's when the third Friday of March falls on 2025. And the new entrants will be announced as early as the week preceding this. So 10th of March through the 14th of March. Now, I just want to highlight that this is not the most likely scenario, because for this to be a reality, it means that not only does SoFi need to break past $16.80, but it needs to hold it on average for December, January, and February, which means that if we have a pullback of any sort, then it's not going to meet that criteria, because the average is going to drop under $18 billion in market cap. The more realistic timeline for SoFi to be eligible, in other words, to maintain an average market cap for the 3 months trailing, would be June or September or even December 2025, depending on how the stock trades. But it could technically be eligible as early as March, because there are 3 months from December through February where it can just hold above that $18 billion market cap, and it can be in the S&P. But we do know that many companies don't enter the S&P the moment that they're eligible. Many companies have to wait several quarters after eligibility to be entering the S&P. Tesla, for example, didn't enter the S&P long after they were eligible. So I just want to highlight that to pair expectations, because yes, while technically everything can work out in SoFi's favor and they could be in the index as early as March, realistically, there's a very low probability of that being the case. It's probably going to happen towards mid or end of 2025. And for those of you watching who don't really understand the significance of this event, this is important because aside from improved liquidity and attraction of institutional investment and mutual funds and pension funds and hedge funds that are now buying into this, it also has positive price impacts because of all the funds and the companies that are tracking the index, which will essentially be buying SoFi every time they're buying the S&P 500. And that's going to drive up the price in a big, big way. Just look at some of the recent entrants and how the price has gone up for them. And what I find interesting about all of this is the timing around it, because there's a number of different factors that come into play here. And the big factor is something that we mentioned at the beginning of this video, which is short interest. The latest short interest numbers were actually just recently released, and they show a big discrepancy here. So let's just take a look at this filing from NASDAQ of SoFi's short interest. As of November 15th, because these numbers come out every 2 weeks and essentially we have a 2 week delay. And yes, there's tools like Ortex and others where you can see more up to date numbers, but we'll just go off of the formal NASDAQ numbers for now. So as of November 15th, the filing is showing 148 million shares sold short. This is about 13.8% of the shares outstanding. Now, if you just look here, there's a few things that I find interesting about this number. First of all, we can see this trend is declining. And we can see that this trend has been declining since mid-August, since August 15th, where it peaked at 192 million shares sold short. And then that slowly dropped to 189. And then in mid-September, it was 186. And it closed off September at 181. And mid-October, it was 180. And it closed off October at 162. And now mid-November, it's at 148. And presumably, the end of November is going to be lower than 148. So there's been a consistent and a gradual steady decline in short interest over the last 4 months. And if you remember, this is even earlier than when SoFi reported their fourth quarter of GAAP profitability. This is before we even broke into the double digits. Shorts have slowly been covering their positions. So that's the first thing. But the second thing that's significant is they're covering their positions now at a faster pace than they were over the past several months. Because, I mean, look at the rate of decline from 180 to 162, from 162 to 148. Whereas in the past, shorts were covering by 3 million or 5 million shares sold short. Now they're covering by 10 or 12 every single 2 weeks. And so the rate of decline is much faster. And the third observation that I have here is that this is the lowest short interest number that SoFi has had since January 12th, 2024, where I believe it was around 118 million shares sold short. It's actually not even in the screenshot because it was so long ago. So we're actually seeing some unprecedented levels of short covering for SoFi because all we've seen with this number is it gradually increased throughout 2024. And now, for the past 4 months, it's been decreasing. And now it's actually decreasing at an accelerated pace. And because we know that shorts have been underwater as a result of this parabolic move, what that tells me is that short sellers have lost millions of dollars betting against this company, and they're covering at rates that we haven't seen for a long time. And now we're finally at the brink of that market cap eligibility for S&P 500 inclusion. Throughout all of this, the sentiment has done a 180 degrees in terms of what people are posting around SoFi. I mean, just when we were reporting the last earnings, people were tagging Anthony Noto, asking him to resign and saying that he has done nothing for the company. And now many of those same people are asking whether it's too late to buy in, whether they've missed the boat. That's how quickly sentiment can change. So naturally, the next question you're going to have here is, okay, where do we go from here? Well, as of market open on Monday, it's officially going to be December, and we only have a limited amount of trading days until the end of the year. And what I expect in those trading days is I expect more short covering for the December 1st filing and even more short covering for December 15th. But that's going to be based on if we hold current prices or if we pull back. But I think we can hold current prices. And the reason why is because I believe that the macro is going to power the end of year Santa Claus rally. We have wars that are coming to an end. We have ceasefires left and right. We have uncertainty being alleviated on the macro level. We have the Fed continuing to cut rates. We have money continuing to flow back into equities at record levels. And yes, there's going to be resistance from a technical perspective at $18 per share. And yes, over the short term, that's going to be a little bit difficult for us to break through. But if we zoom out, I think 2025 is going to be a terrific year for the business fundamentally. And the market is finally realizing this. I even saw an article earlier today around Trump to rescind the student loan forgiveness that Biden had pushed so hard for all throughout his term. And that's not even a big deal for SoFi on a tangible level because of the Supreme Court's decision. But it is from a psychological perspective because it's one further uncertainty that has been alleviated for the company. And so it's significant in that perspective. Anthony Noto himself said that this is going to be one of the best years that the business is going to have from a macro tailwind perspective in a long time. And I think we have a good chance of maintaining that $18 billion market cap in December and going forward. And yes, by saying that, I do realize that it means we have to form a new base in the $17 to $18 range. But I think that we can do that, right? Because I think if we break that wall at $18, we can run up to 20, and then that resistance is going to turn into support for our next leg higher. And I think all of that can happen by the end of the year. My prediction at the beginning of 2024 was exactly that. I actually had a clip that I reposted a couple days ago where I was basically asked, hey, what is your prediction for SoFi end of the year? And I said, I think we can go to 20 and then we're going to pull back and end the year at 18. And so I still think that we can do that because 18 is going to be solid resistance. And so that's the next battleground. Can we break 18 or are we going to get rejected off of 18 and then see a pullback? But if we do break 18, then 18 is going to be that new resistance. And if we do that, then I think that we have a good chance of having an average market cap above 18 billion for the next 3 months, December, January, and February, which would make us immediately eligible for the S&P 500 as early as March. We'll see what happens. But for right now, thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I will see you in the next video.